And we are live on our April 4, 2/20/11/01 A Plus Study Group pre-show. We're almost ready to go. 10 minutes to go before the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Let's get the chat room up. There's the chat room. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We've got all new questions for you from the 2/20/11/01 exam objectives. So there's plenty of things to do in this first hour. In the second hour, I'll take questions from the chat room. So that's the plan for the next couple hours. We'll get settled in. I'm checking things here. We're recording here. That looks good. Stream is up and running. Hello, chat room. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are slowly getting things going. That first stream of the month, I usually have a week off. I think I had a week and a half off on this one. I have to get back into the swing of things. I think I know where all the buttons are at this point. We'll figure it out. Hey, Jeff in downtown Houston, Texas. We got Bottle of Gin taking your Core 1 exam today. Today. That's going to be fun. And now you got a little bit of prep work. We'll get you in the mode. Your headspace will be in the 1101 exam objective area, and you'll just walk in and crush it. So easy peasy. We'll get you covered. Hello, Algeria's checking in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we've got Arkansas and Queens, New York. The Queens, New York. Which queen is it? Is it Victoria? Which queen is Queens named after? We've got Houston, Texas. Hello. There's Canada. Thanks for being here. I will let Mrs. Professor Messer know that Canada has checked in. We've got Berlin and New Orleans and Washington, Seattle, Washington, El Paso, Texas. That sounds like a different language. Ohio is here. Hello, England and Belgium. My English sometimes is a different language. New York City, Jamaica. Thanks for being here. And Jamaica and New York City, two different places in this particular context. Hello, Tanzania and Tennessee and Ghana and Saudi Arabia and Africa is here. Zambia, Africa. We got California. We got lots going on. Thanks for being here, everybody. The Core 1 we have for you today are all questions I wrote like 2 weeks ago. So I have no idea what's in front of me. I sort of remember the questions that I wrote because some of them I wrote 2 months ago. So we'll have to figure this out as we go along. I did check, and I do have the right questions, so that part's good. Let's get this ready to go here, even though we have a few minutes. That looks good. Screens are looking good. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're in just fine place. Yeah, some folks checking in from all over the world in the chat room. Thanks for being here. Some of the places I've been to, some I have not. So we'll have to figure out all of that. Let's do a little bit of tightening. I think we've got all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. What a good question from Ahmed in the chat room. Excuse me, but I don't understand what this live about thing is. Well, that makes most of us really. So that's sort of a normal stream for us. This is the pre-show. This is not the actual show. During the actual show, you'll see me. So right now it's the pre-show. I'm sort of making sure everything is in its place. And at the top of the hour, for the next hour after that, I'll be asking you questions from the CompTIA exam objectives. So just hang on and we'll get you there. Have I ever been to Seattle? I have been to Seattle quite a few times, as a matter of fact. Been up the Needle, like all good tourists are supposed to do. And then I've been there for business and doing other things as well. So I did a run from, I think I was in Beaverton. We went up to Seattle. We could have gone up to Vancouver from there, but I sort of stopped there. Somebody else handles Canada. They wouldn't let me touch Canada. So that's the way it goes, I think. But always fun to go to Seattle. There's always something interesting going on there. There's always something of note to enjoy when you go to the Great Northwest. Always something going on. Of course, that's quite a sort of a tech hub all up and down that West Coast. There is a lot of technology, and so that's another good place for all of those. Obviously, Microsoft, pretty big there, and sort of built. It sort of trickled down into Oregon, and then of course California has extensive technical resources. Got a lot to do there. Okay, 5 minutes to go, everybody. 5 minutes until we get started. We'll get you settled in, see how you do with these questions, See if you can remember what questions we had last month that were so bad that I can repeat this month. We have one. The very first question we do is one from last month. It's our rewind question. So I always like to see how that one goes. This is my first lesson for CompTIA Plus. Is this live? Are we live? Well, if it says live on your screen, you are. If it doesn't say live on your screen, you are not. If you are here at noon Eastern on the 4th of April, then yes, you are here live. So that's how you know. Otherwise, the replay that's available immediately afterwards, that's it. Are we live? That's a different question. That is a completely different, there's a whole philosophy there, isn't there? We could go into a philosophical conversation about what is live? How do we know it's live? How can we confirm being live? If a tree falls on the live stream, do you really hear it? Those are the real questions we have to waste our time thinking about in those classes and then immediately ignore for the rest of our life. So unless you end up going into psychology, and then there's a whole different kind of problems that comes with that. We've got plenty here to go through. I've been working this weekend on a number of different things and putting them up. So yeah, I can see your chat. See your chat going by. That's always good. Always good to know as the chats go by what's going on. We've got a lot of questions in here, but one of the things I like to look at when we go through the different questions that are there is I kind of touch all of the different categories. I try to touch all the different domains. So hopefully we'll be able to get through the different domains as well. We'll eventually get there. I hope so. I hope we're able to do that. We'll have to find out as we go through it if I covered all the bases. I think I do. Sometimes I talk too much and I try to get through it, so we have to do extra questions. But most of the time, it's fine. We're good to go. Today's plan is the same plan as all of our live study groups. In the first hour, I ask you questions. And in the second hour, you ask me questions. I guess relatively simple agenda, isn't it? We'll have to see how you do with these. It's always something fun. And we get to ask good questions, kind of drill down into the answers and understand more about it. And it's always something that you're going to learn something as we go through. It's something you can learn something. That's our new mission statement at ProfessorMesser.com. It's a something that allows you to learn something. I'm so well spoken today. I'm so glad to be here and doing this for you. This is always fun, though. I'm always so excited when we have live stream day, kind of wake up, ready to go to the live stream. There's some things I do the day before. So it's always a good expectation of things to come. I need Keynote. There's Keynote. And looking for, oh, see, now we've already hit a problem. Do I not have? Probably because it's on a different connection. So already we've run into a technical challenge, everybody. Let's see if I can get Keynote to wake itself up and be on my network. I wonder if it is on my network. It isn't. It's not even on the right Wi-Fi network. Did I sleep well? We're about to find out. See, these questions are relatively self-evident. Did I sleep well? Who knows? Who would know? All right, now that we're on the wireless, see, we got the red. That's not good. You don't want red, you want green. Let's touch that. Let's go to our Keynote preferences. Let's have a look at our sharing, if I can do that. Remotes, is that what I want? It's enabled. My iPad is there. And we are, well, in fact, I need to check and see if I'm on the same Wi-Fi network. These are always the things. We're going to go airplane mode real quick because I know how iPads are. And then we'll be back. And then we'll try it again. Good times, everybody. Good times. Nope, not working. That's a shame. Okay. We're going to unlink everything. Go back in. And there's our sign that says, hey, it's time to get started, everybody, which is perfect unless you're like me and trying to get your system synced up. We'll get started here in a second. We've got a lot. I think we can fix a number of things here. And we'll talk about where you can go to answer questions, what things are important for you to go to. Let's fix our wireless. Let's connect to the network, that one. Okay, now we're doing it. And let's see what we can do here on the keynote. Doesn't like it. Does not like the keynote. And there goes the whole presentation, everybody. We can't do anything now. Doesn't matter. We're gonna make it happen anyhow. We're just gonna go live and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen, really? Well, there's a lot of things, quite honestly, that would be bad. So we'll figure it out. Give it one more try. The buttons don't work. You just keep clicking, everybody. Just keep clicking the buttons. And no such luck. That's okay. We're going to start her up anyway. We're going to shift over to our live stream front end. There it is. And we're going to get things started. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101 A+ study group. We almost did security there for just a moment. No, it is today is our A+ study group. In fact, it is the Core 1, our first of 2 live streams that we're going to do this week. This is indeed one of those live streams where once you get in and you start asking questions, we may drill down into some of these things pretty deeply. So we're so glad that you're here to join us. We've got a lot to go through today. And I want to first let you know that if you are here live, you can participate by answering the questions online. You can do this by opening up a new browser window and going to professormesser.com/QA. There's the link that's on your screen. That's an easy way to get to where you need to go. There are some other links that you might hit as well. Some of these are in an app that you can get from your favorite app store. The app you're looking for is one called the Socrative Student app. That's the one that's going to help you the most. There it is. It is on your favorite app store. And if you do use the app, it will ask you for a room name. And the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right or you won't see any of the questions that are in the room. And that doesn't help anybody. We want you to see the questions that are there. And in fact, there will be a question already waiting for you. The question that's waiting for you is one that we call our rewind question. Our rewind question is this one. It is a question that asks, an administrator is installing a new cable modem at a remote site. Which of the following connectors is used to connect the modem to the cable company network? Is that an F connector, RJ45, USB-C, DB9, or RJ11? Now, don't answer in the chat room. That's our standing rule, of course, is please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, we're going to have you answer by visiting this URL. There it is, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. We will come back to that question in just a bit. There's always something to go through there, but when we'll come back to this question, we'll answer any questions you might have about that in just a moment. Well, thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups for A+ Core 1 every month. We also do a Core 2 every month. And when we go through those presentations or the meetings, the live streams, the webinars, we always try to hit some of the most important things that you'll find in the CompTIA exam objectives. But of course, when we're not here, you're welcome to join us elsewhere online. Of course, we have our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. All of our daily A+ pop quiz questions you can find over at Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. And then, of course, you can find us on Instagram as well, where you can get your questions with a pretty picture. Who wouldn't want that? So there's lots of other ways that you can get something out of today's event. This live event is also good for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Please listen in sometime in this first hour. I will give you instructions on how you can redeem that by emailing me with the correct information. If you don't have your A+ certification yet, this doesn't apply to you, but if you do have your A+ and you're looking to renew, those CEUs might come in handy. There are, of course, 2 A+ exams that you have to pass to earn your certification. The 220-1101 and 220-1102 are the version numbers of those exams. That's the ones that you want to make sure you know where it is and that you're able to take and pass both of them. They were released on April of 2022, so they haven't been out quite a year yet. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, which means that this particular series of exams should be available until somewhere around October of 2025. That's an estimate, and we'll learn more about what it will actually be when we finally get somewhere close to that October timeframe. There are 2 exams. The exams are each 90 minutes long. On the 220-1101, you need to score 675. On the 220-1102, you need to score a 700. So a little bit different in the scoring. Notice the scale for the scoring is a little bit interesting as well. It's on a scale from 100 to 900. And when you pass your exam, your certification is good for 3 years. So although we're talking up here about exams being retired, once you get certified, doesn't matter what happens to the exams, you are certified and locked in. So that's another nice thing to know if you're planning your certification exams, is exactly that particular case. The 220-1101 that we will be talking about today is, of course, covering mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. And I think we will be able to use those different categorizations to ask some questions about the exam and the things that we are looking to do on the exam. So as we step through this, you should see a lot of those topics show up as we go through here. I've got quite a bit of study groups and information that we've stored on this exam. You can watch any of the replays. We also have an audio version of this available for replay. It's in podcast format. You can see all of our available podcasts at professormesser.com/podcast for our A+ study groups, our Network Plus study groups, and our Security Plus study groups. So there's always something to find out about. You can find out about those and the replays at professormesser.com/podcast. Yeah, you can also, by the way, use your favorite streaming services. So if you're on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or some of the iHeartRadio and others that are out there, you can simply search for Professor Messer and you'll find the live streams there as well. So always a place to go depending on, and if I don't cover your favorite streaming service, let me know. Maybe we can add that. Also, this live stream video will be available for replay immediately afterwards. And you'll notice about a day later that suddenly the YouTube video description has all of these fantastic timestamps inside of it that you can click on and go directly to what you're looking for. We're able to do that thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this replay, probably at 2x speed and going through as quickly as possible to find those timestamps, post them for you, and you can go back years to find these timestamps. So incredibly useful. Thank you, Lori. And I know others in the chat room, thank you as well. When we are not here on our live stream, you can, of course, find us on Discord. That is our online chat. If you're studying for your A+ certification, there are a lot of people on our Discord doing exactly the same thing. And if you have questions or something that you'd like a little more clarification, not only myself, but many others are there to help. And usually you'll get together. There's folks that will do questions together. They'll go through topics and videos and watch the videos together in our chat rooms. There's live streams that you can set up ad hoc. It's all available on our Discord server. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. We have a fantastic community there. We would love to have you join us. There's no cost. There's no requirements. You simply join Discord and you can find us at professormesser.com/Discord. Of course, eventually you're going to need to take your exam. And on the Professor Messer website, we have some vouchers that might help you. You can check out those discounted vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers if you happen to live in the U.S., Canada, or some U.S. territories. If you purchase the voucher on my site, not only is it discounted, and you don't need special discount codes or special things loaded into your browser, all you need are the pages here at professormesser.com/vouchers. It's already discounted for you. And if you purchase the voucher on my site, you should go to also check your membership. You'll notice that you can now download the CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook that is there as well. So I think that's another great place to go. If you're somebody who is really working on trying to get the best possible prices on vouchers, make sure you look around, because you really can't beat some of the savings we have at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which was an administrator is installing a new cable modem at a remote site. The question is asking which of the connectors you would use to connect the modem to the cable company network. And you have a number of choices here. You have an F connector, an RJ45, a USB-C, a DB9, and an RJ11. Let's see what you answered. We'll show the results. 58% of you say it's an F connector. We have 28% of you say that is RJ45, and then single digits for everything else. RJ11 got 8%, and then USB-C and DB9 got 3% apiece. So this is a pretty good question to ask. If you're someone installing a cable modem, you should probably look at the back. If you have a cable modem, look at the back of your cable modem. What type of connector is coming from the cable company? And if you look closely, you'll notice that's probably a coax cable like this one. And it's using a connector type at the end of it called an F connector. The F doesn't stand for anything. The F is the version of the connector. So there was an A connector and a B connector and a C connector and a D connector. I guess those didn't catch on. And then there was an F connector. There were also connectors after this, but it seems that the industry finally decided on, we'll use the F connector, and so that's the one that we're always using. It's probably got coax connected to it, probably something like RG6 to be able to make that happen, and that's what the connector would look like as it's plugging into the cable modem. So that's the answer to our question. In fact, 60% of you got this right, which, by the way, was a huge increase over last month's question. So you're doing great. The things you're doing with your studies seem to be working exactly as one would expect, because now we know that you, at least 60% of you, have said, yep, that's our F connector. That's the one we'd like to use. And you got that one absolutely correct. So well done. RJ45 is commonly associated with Ethernet. So commonly, it probably would not be connecting to your cable company over an Ethernet connection. RJ11 would be a good connection for a internet provider, but over a DSL link. And in this case, we specified a cable modem link, so that would not apply. USB-C, very common to plug in peripherals and other devices on your system, but not on cable modem. That would not be used for the cable company's configuration. And then the DB9 is a serial connection commonly used for older configurations where you're plugging into a serial port or a console or management port on a infrastructure device. So that's the idea anyway, is that you can look at all of these, but really only one of them applied to a cable modem, and that would indeed be the F connector. It's exactly what we were looking for. So one of the things that we'd like to do in these live streams, now that you're in, can answer these questions, and we know that the live stream question answering part is working as we would expect, what we'd like to do now is get a different type of question to ask. As you may be aware, on your A+ exam, the first few questions that you get on the exam are not going to be multiple choice questions. The one we just did was multiple choice. There was a question and then multiple answers to choose from. But on your exam, a lot of it will be multiple choice, but of course, you will get questions that are not multiple choice. These might be fill in the blank. They might be matching questions. They might be questions where you have to put things in a particular order. It might be a drag and drop type question. But all of these performance-based questions are all tied back to the exam objectives. So if you know the exam objectives, as I often say, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You're going to get that question right because you know what the question is about. So that is where we're really focusing on, is understanding the contents and what is in these particular questions. So I have for you, as always, the first new question in our study group is a performance-based question. And here is your performance-based question of the month. This one is going to be difficult for you podcast people that are listening on the audio-only side, because this is a name the interface question where I have 4 different interfaces in front of you, 1, 2, 3, and 4. and I'm asking you to name the interface. Now, in this case, I think my head is in the way of one of these. So I'm going to move out of the way here real quick so you can see all 4 of those interfaces is what we're looking for. And I want you, in this case, it's a fill in the blank. You really often don't see fill in the blank questions on the exam. I think on the actual exam, it's probably something that would be an option to do a pull down menu or a matching question, maybe a drag and drop. But this one here, obviously, we're looking for the name that's associated with it. So you can look across the top. You'll see there is an interface and a cable that goes with the interface. I want you to name what that interface happens to be. These would probably, if you looked on the back of practically any computer on your corporate network, you're probably going to see one of these interfaces, I would bet. At least many of the systems that you have. Certainly some of the systems you have at home. That might help you as well. Your link to answer this question right there at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA, where you can lock in what you think the answer happens to be. I'm going to show the answers. You can't see them, but I'm watching you as you're putting in the answers on my side. Some answers I was expecting, some I was not. So I think the very first one is an interesting one to talk about when we go through it, but most of you are doing very well with these. So well done with the questions you have going in. I'm seeing a lot more people type in what they think the answers are for this. So lock in what you think the name of those interfaces happens to be. You can lock those in by going to professormesser.com/QA. As always, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We're going to answer using the link that's at the bottom of our page, professormesser.com/QA. It's exactly where you want to go. Now that a number of you have gotten this one in, let's have a look. We'll step through each one of these interfaces and see if you got it right. So the first one that's there is one that actually, of all of the questions that came through, I found that one to probably be the one that most people did not get correct. So this is the one, and you'll notice this interface that's on the screen is the one that we're really focusing on. This one to the left. Notice that the interface itself, relatively large because these are effectively to scale, but notice that it has kind of a dent on the end of it, if you will. Not really a dent, it's more of an indentation on the end of it. So you can really see that that interface is not the same. It's not symmetric all the way around. There's a tiny little bit. Now that means, of course, that when you try to plug in this particular interface, you're not going to be able to do it unless it's exactly at the right orientation, and that is, of course, by design. So as we go through this first interface, a number of you said this was an HDMI interface, but HDMI is symmetric in the way that it is made. In this case, when you have that small divot out of the end of it, designates that it is a DisplayPort interface. DisplayPort is what we were looking at during that first one. So that is, of course, a video interface and a very useful one, but it is not HDMI. It is its own standard of DisplayPort. The next one on the list, I think most of you got correct. This is obviously going in on options that are flying by in a fill in the blank, so it doesn't tally the results. But I think most of you got this one right, probably because it's such a ubiquitous standard. It's everywhere you look these days, is USB-C. USB-C, of course, defines the physical interface itself, which is a little different than how USB has been defined in the past. USB, of course, has its own signaling, and you can, of course, send USB signals over a USB-C interface, but you could also send DisplayPort signals over a USB interface. You could also send HDMI signals over a USB-C interface because it's just an interface. It doesn't specify or guarantee a certain type of signal on that particular link. So USB-C is the one we were looking for here, and indeed, that is probably becoming so popular. In fact, I have a DisplayPort screen in the studio, and it's the one that's to my right here. That DisplayPort screen is one that does have a USB connection on it, even though it is sending DisplayPort signals over that USB-C. So just another one of those to think about. We've also got an interface here. This is larger interface is one that most people, I think, got absolutely correct as well, because that is a DVI interface. DVI being a very popular standard for video, It's less popular these days, probably not only because it's such a very large interface, and we like to have the smallest interfaces possible to save room on these devices, but the one that is here also has, as you can tell, has a screen right in the front of it. So you can kind of see, oh, that must be for video. So there was a little bit of a hint with the DVI interface that's there. DVI, of course, another one of those video standards, but also doesn't send audio through a DVI interface. Probably another reason that HDMI just became so popular, and now USB-C, for being able to plug in a video type connection. And then lastly on our list is a lightning cable. This is a lightning connection for you Apple people that have lightning devices. My lightning device right in front of me. Can't see it because I'm not in the way, but there's my lightning connected device right here on my desk. So this is one I think that really does help if you are someone who is trying to look at the back of a computer and determine what those interfaces are. That's something very useful for your A+ exam, or perhaps looking at individual ends of cables is another one. So this is a pretty good one to really think about. The idea of having all of these types of interfaces and immediately being able to recognize them really is one of the common questions you would get on something like an A+ exam. So make sure you're familiar with those. I think that might help as you go through your study. So those are the 4 interfaces we were looking for. We have DisplayPort, and now we know the difference between DisplayPort and HDMI. We've got USB-C, we've got DVI, and we've got Lightning. So those are the different connections. These are the idea of being able to work through what we are kind of understanding about hardware. And hardware, of course, is a big part of the Core 1 exam. You should absolutely be familiar with all of these interface types and others. There's many other interfaces and hardware components you need to be aware of. They're all in your Core 1 exam objectives. Make sure you have a look at those objectives or go through my videos where I, of course, cover every single one of those. Let's go back to some multiple choice-based questions. Before we do that, I want to thank Mr. Cube in the chat room with $5 super chat who says, thanks to you, I got my A+ cert. The study guides and practice exams were worth the price. Thanks again. And you're absolutely welcome. We did the little part. You're the one that took the exam. So congratulations on your new A+ exam, and thank you for your support with our course notes and our practice exams. We'll talk more about the practice exams later on in this. I want to thank also MG's Tech Tips, who says, thank you, sir, for helping me pass A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Was able to pass all 3 in the first try. That's what you want, right? It's been quite the year. I appreciate all your help and resources. Would CySA Plus ever be on my list? Well, it's always on the list. The real question is there going to be a way to do it with the amount of time available in the day? It's more of a physics question, I guess. Thank you, MG, for the $19.99 super chat. And we'll have to stay tuned to see exactly what type of certification exams may be coming next. Let's keep moving with these, though, because we have a lot more questions to go. Let's shift gears back to a multiple choice-based question. Here's your new question. It asks, users authenticate to a label printing computer using face recognition. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is this process hashing, NTFS, biometrics, EFS, or encryption? Users authenticate to a label printing computer using face recognition. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it hashing, NTFS, biometrics, EFS, encryption? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. As always, please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We want to instead go to the link that is on your screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Should be able to figure out what these happen to be. See if you are familiar with this topic. This would be one, I think, where you do have to go through all 5 of these answers to really figure out what might be the right one and which one might be the wrong one. So go through each one of those, see if you can get a familiarity with what really is being asked of you with this particular question. This is, by the way, an important challenge on these exams, is to really read the questions and the answers. because sometimes you think the question is leading you down a particular path, but in reality, they may be asking you something you weren't prepared for. So make sure you read very carefully through all of these. More than once, I've taken a CompTIA exam. I've gone through the whole exam, and when I have time left over, I literally go back to question 1 and I just cycle through all of the questions again. I read them again and I read my answer, even if I'm pretty sure I'm done, just to make sure. And occasionally I have found myself reading through it the second time that indeed I missed something the first time around, or I misread it the first time around and it was actually a different answer. So if you have the time, going back and rereading the questions, using all of the time they gave you, or as much of the time as they gave you for these exams, is useful. Time management is so important. And if you have time left over, you should be reading back through your questions. You should use as much of that time as you need, and you should read through and use all of those questions. Make sure you're familiar with all the questions that are there. It becomes pretty important. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, users authenticate to a label printing computer using face recognition. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it hashing, NTFS, biometrics, EFS, encryption? And let's see how you answered this one. We'll show the results. 98% of you are locked into this. You know that that's a biometric. You're using your phone. That's something we do all the time. If you have a phone these days, you might have a biometric face recognition capability built into that. It is an important one on this exam that you understand different ways to authenticate. This is one of many different ways to authenticate to a system. You'll be asked questions about biometrics in your Network Plus exam and your Security Plus exam. And of course, they show up here on the A Plus as well. Now, it wouldn't be hashing. There's nothing about face recognition that is using hashing, at least not directly, although it would not be unusual for them to look at your face, identify all of the different points, save that as a hash, very similar to saving as a password, but we have nothing in this question that even describes that back-end process, or even if they do that. So we probably would not be the best description of the process, which is what the question asked. The question didn't ask which of these could possibly be used in this process. In that case, it could be hashing, but it asked which would best describe this process, and hashing doesn't fit that best category. Neither does NTFS. The NT file system is one that is used. It's an indexing system used to store files on a drive, but it has nothing to do with authenticating into a system, at least not in the context of this particular question. We've got EFS, the encrypting file system, allows you to encrypt individual files on your Windows system. But this doesn't talk about encrypting individual files. This talks about authenticating to a system. And lastly, encryption is here. There may be an encryption component to this technology that's using the face recognition, but there's no mention of that in the question. Therefore, of all of the 5 options we have, the one that really is the best description is the one that 98% of you chose, which would be my biometrics. You got that one absolutely correct. Well done. This is built into Windows, by the way. If you are someone who's working through and having at least some availability with these, this would be a really useful tool. That way, you don't even necessarily have to remember a lot of authentication details. Just have the camera look at your face. That's it. That's the biometrics. That's what we were looking for. And if you're somebody who's working with biometrics, you know that is a pretty useful type of technology. In Windows, you'll see it referred to as Windows Hello Face, the Windows Hello fingerprint, the Windows Hello pin. That's those biometric and other authentication methods that are just built into Windows and ready to go. Those are the right answer. Well done. 98% of you had this one cold from the very, very beginning. Let's do another question. I have one here for you. As this question asks, a company manages warehouse inventory using a wireless technology. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Is it long-range fixed wireless, RFID, 5G, WISP, or NFC? A company manages warehouse inventory using a wireless technology. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be long-range fixed wireless, RFID, 5G, WISP, or NFC? Now, if you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that's on your screen. Please go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This is one that we'll see how familiar you are with these wireless technologies and how they can be used. All of these wireless? All of the things listed here are wireless technologies, and they're all in the CompTIA exam objectives. So this is a very good example of how many of these technologies are set up for you to at least understand that it's wireless, but you also have to know in what context would you use these wireless technologies. So that's the real difference on the A+ exam. That's why I often tell you, don't waste your time with flashcards, at least flashcards that are doing nothing but telling you what these abbreviations might mean. Knowing the abbreviation might be helpful to solving a problem like this, but in this particular case, I don't know that it does you much use. Really, you want to understand what that abbreviation does in context to everything else on the network or on the computer. So it's more about how do you use the technology rather than recognizing what kind of technology it happens to be. And ultimately, that's probably the most important thing in your job is not knowing, do you know Ethernet? Yes. Well, how would you use Ethernet? Well, that's a different question. It's a very different question. And that's why you get a lot of those on the exam of how do you use the technology rather than what is this technology? That's a multi-step answer, too. You have to go through a couple of steps to finally get to the end of that one. Let's see if you were able to get through a couple of steps on this one. The question again asked, a company manages warehouse inventory using a wireless technology. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Is it long-range fixed wireless, RFID, 5G, WISP, or NFC? And you can see that we didn't get a majority on this one, but we did get 44% of you that say the answer is RFID. 20% said long-range fixed wireless, 15% said 5G, 11% said NFC, and 10% said WISP. So right after we have our top one and top two, it's almost a three-way tie for third place because of those. So if we go with the plurality of you, not a majority, but 44% is a pretty good number that said RFID is what we were looking for. RFID, of course, stands for radio frequency identification. And you'll find RFID technology everywhere. If you have a credit card, if you have an access card to your building, if you badge in and badge out when you go to work, you're doing this probably, most likely, with RFID. Very, very useful to have that there. Whenever I start getting into the details of these exams, it's useful to know what these look like. And you don't often see an RFID tag because they're inside of the plastic badge that you're using. But it's probably something like this inside the plastic badge that allows you to go into RFID. It powers that RFID chip that's in there through induction. So you get just close to the reader powers that chip, sends the signal to the reader, and then lets you in the door. So pretty useful and incredibly useful for something like in an inventory situation like this question asked for, because you can simply go up to a pallet and scan the pallet, and now you know exactly what's inside of the pallet. Even if the pallet was wrapped up, even if it's up on a shelf somewhere, you just have to get your sensor close enough to be able to read the RFID chip that's in there to be able to track where the inventory might be. You can see why that would be an incredibly useful wireless technology, especially in a warehouse. And so RFID here, I think, really would be the best choice for this task. Let's see if we step through some of the others. We've got, of course, a long-range fixed wireless, and 19% of you chose that option. That would be very useful if your warehouse happened to be 5 kilometers long. But in this case, most warehouses are not that distance anyway. Long-range fixed wireless is commonly used by internet service providers, can also be used across very, very extended areas between different locations, but it's for kilometers or kilometers of distance, depending on where you're in the world. That distance is one that you're probably not going to run into inside of a single warehouse. So this would probably not be the best choice for doing inventory inside of a warehouse using something like long-range fixed wireless. We've got 5G networks, which of course are great for mobile technologies. 5G commonly not used inside of a warehouse, so that's not one we would choose either. A wireless internet service provider, a WISP, is another one, really more of a description of a business rather than a technology. But there are a number of wireless technologies you can use in a warehouse, but WISP would probably not be one of those. We've got, of course, an NFC as our last option, the near field communication. If you've ever paid for something with your watch or with your phone, you were using NFC as the wireless technology. That's probably not what we're using inside of the warehouse because NFC has such a small range to be able to use it. You have to be pretty close to the reader for NFC to operate properly. RFID, you've got a little bit more flexibility there. You can use powered or unpowered. There's a lot of different options. There's different sizes of RFID sensors or chips. So in this case, for what we want to do, which of course is managing warehouse inventory, the best option here is option B, RFID. 46% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. As you can already tell on this exam, the type of technologies that will be asked of you are many and varied. In fact, if you look at my videos just for A+, my 2 courses are 137 videos, over 19 hours of content in these courses. That's quite a bit of content. And so one of the things I realize is not everybody has time to read through or watch every single video that's out on my website. So I wanted to create a set of consolidated notes that takes everything from my course and puts it into a single document. And that's what we have here with my 2201101 course notes, where everything that is in the exam objectives is listed here. You can see it's 57 or 58 pages to be able to see all of it. And it covers all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the tables. Everything you would need to know on this exam is in this book. Now, of course, it doesn't replace watching the videos. It doesn't replace reading a book or getting great hands-on or doing practice questions, but it is a consolidated view of those once you've gone through that process. So if you're in your final study sessions and you're trying to have something that you can take with you that's very mobile, but something that also contains every bit of information you need to know and something that can maybe help you remember some of these, that's my course notes. You can find out more about these by going to professormesser.com/1101 notes. I have both the digital version that you saw on my screen, that digital PDF. I also have a physical version. These are printed notes. They are exactly the same as the digital version. In fact, if you buy the physical version, you get the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, I ship anywhere in the world, you'll be able to download the PDF immediately, start watching that, and then your book will show up probably about a week and a half, and you'll be able to read through the book as well as your digital views. You can find out more about this on my website or go directly to professormesser.com/1101 notes. Let's do another question. Here's the question. This one is a question that asks, a network scanner uses SMB to store the digital scans. Which of the following would be the most likely destination for these files? Would it be cloud storage, FTP server, digital certificate, Windows share, web server? A network scanner uses SMB to store the digital scans. Which of the following would be the most likely destination for these files? Is it cloud storage, FTP server, digital certificate, Windows share, web server? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. We want to use the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. You folks are doing a great job. I think we're getting through some of these technologies. We're approaching these questions, and this is another question where it might help to know the flashcard definition of SMB, but that doesn't help you answer this question. It's another example of the exam not asking you about trivial knowledge, but instead asking you to apply this knowledge to things that you need to accomplish on the network. And this is certainly a common application, something that you might run into anytime you are on a network and working in a corporation or working in a company or an organization where you need to do this type of scanning. You'll need to know, where do these files go? Well, what technology are we using? And then you sort of break things down from there. That might help you. See if you can lock that in. Follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Yeah, I have RFID. You'll find RFID in the most amazing places. I have a drinking glass here, a plastic or a paper cup, effectively, that you would purchase from a retailer or from a food, like a restaurant, that sat on a drink dispenser. And when you sat it on the drink dispenser, the RFID chip on the bottom of the cup would register when you got your drink. And then if you came back and tried to get more of your soda, it would say, sorry, you already got your soda. We already tracked your RFID in your cup. You can't get more of that. That's just sort of the way it goes for that particular. There's no refills, so they track it using an RFID chip that's built into the cup itself. Isn't that a unique way to keep you from going back again and again to get the soda that you might want? I'll have to find that cup later on. Maybe I can find the details. We'll hold it up to the camera and see if we can see the RFID chip that's inside of that. We'll do that in the after show. Somebody remind me. And I'll figure out the way to do that. In this case, though, we're scanning and we're saving information, and we'll have to figure out what this is. Let's see how you answered this one. The question again asked, a network scanner uses SMB to store the digital scans. Which of the following would be the most likely destination for these files? Is it cloud storage, FTP server, digital certificate, Windows share, or web server? And we can see that we're not quite sure. We are all over the place. 33% of you, only a third of you, chose Windows share. 29% chose FTP server. That's effectively a tie. And if we sort of extend that out, a close second would be cloud storage. And then 11% of you chose web server, and then 6% chose digital certificate. Well, that's quite a mix of different options there. The real key here is how we are storing this information. We very specifically had information in this question about how it was being used, but this is not an unusual use case. Of course, we have these types of printers or all-in-one devices, multi-function devices, MFDs, that we have in our offices, and they can print, they can copy, they can scan, and they might even be able to fax. Facsimile. We can talk about that later. I explain what all those happen to be. But this is one where you put your the piece of paper you want to have scanned right on top. You push a button, and it sends this piece of paper, once it's digitized, sends the file somewhere. Where is it going to send it? Now, if it's sending it with server message block, or SMB, that is something that's very specific to Microsoft. It is very commonly used as a protocol inside the Windows operating system to be able to send, receive files, and or print jobs. So in this case, if you are using SMB, it's most likely in a Microsoft ecosystem, which means that it's probably going to store that file on a Windows share. Just makes sense. If it's a Windows technology, that's probably where it's going to store it. And 34% of you said, yep, that's where I would store it, is on a Windows share. That's exactly what SMB implies, that you're storing it in some type of Windows technology. Now, 28% of you said FTP server. Well, I guess if the FTP server was a Windows FTP server, that would be fine, but that's not what it says. It just says FTP server. And FTP has its own protocol called FTP, the file transfer protocol, that is used to transfer and manage the files that are stored on an FTP server. In this case, we're using SMB, not FTP. So FTP server would not be the most likely destination for these files compared to all of the others. We have cloud storage at 21%. Cloud storage often has another set of protocols that it uses, often proprietary. So it's usually using something like HTTPS so that it can get through firewalls easily and store files out into a system. It might be using SFTP or FTPS or HTTPS. It can be using a number of different technologies to be able to do that. But that's certainly one that is important to know. If you ever are in a situation where you're trying to figure out how to store this information on a cloud storage provider, check their documentation. They'll tell you what they're using for their cloud storage, but it probably is not SMB, because SMB is not something that's commonly allowed through folks' firewall. Certainly not a common use through a firewall. We also have 11% said a web server. Web server uses HTTP or HTTPS, so that's not going to work either. That is not SMB. Web server is very unusual to send SMB to a web server, so that's not what we would use. And lastly, digital certificate, which is not a file storage mechanism at all. A digital certificate is simply a digital file that contains information that can be referenced by a third party, usually in a standard format. So a digital certificate has nothing and no relationship to SMB either. The real answer here, the only answer here that makes sense as the most likely destination is indeed the one that got the plurality of the vote. 34% of you chose D, Windows Share, and indeed it is D, Windows Share. That's exactly what we were looking for. And if you answered D, you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I think I have a little bit more, a few more questions here to step through. So let's do another question on our list. Here's a question that asks, a cloud server is configured with specific CPU, memory, storage, network, and operating system options. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it hybrid, SaaS, private, community, or IaaS? The question is, a cloud server is configured with a specific CPU, memory, storage, network, and operating system options. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it hybrid, SaaS, private, community, or IaaS? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll have to figure out what this answer is all by itself and figure out the details. Have a look at the different options you have and see if you can find the one that you would like to choose out of those 5 different options. We do need to know a lot about the cloud, certainly the fundamentals of the cloud. And this is a fundamental cloud question. See if you're familiar with what these happen to be. The question, and this specific question, is one that it very much is relying on your knowledge of different cloud implementations. So you may want to go back to the videos that we really went through an overview of cloud implementations and see. Absolutely an A+ question. If it's in the A+ exam objectives, you need to know it. So that's the important part. Make sure you're familiar with what's there. So that would be good as well. Make sure that that you work through all of the possible questions this might be and see if you're familiar where you might be able to categorize this one. You might look at least initially and think, where can I break this down? How can I see how this works? And we'll talk about that in the answer to these as well. It might help if you really step through all of the details. This is one that a lot of you already locked in your answer, so I'm wondering if perhaps you don't even know this, if you might have this already. This question, of course, is asking, let's see if we know the answer. A cloud server is configured with specific CPU, memory, storage, network, and operating system options. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it hybrid, SaaS, private, community, or IaaS? Let's see what you chose. 56% of you say it's IaaS. We have 20% that said private, 15% that said SaaS, and then 7% said hybrid, and only 2% said community. This is one that really helps if you break down what's happening in the question. So if you go to the question, you can see that this is one where you've configured this server, or someone has configured this server, and they specified exactly the type of server they wanted. They specified what type of CPU, what type of memory, type of storage, how much network capacity, and different operating system options. They effectively built this from the ground up to be exactly the type of server that they wanted. In fact, if you go to professormesser.com right now, that is a cloud server where I chose the specific CPU, memory, storage, network, and operating system options. So this is one really pulled right out of reality and put into a question in our study group. And when I'm doing that, when I'm building out all of the details of this service myself, then I am building it out as infrastructure as a service. Sometimes this is called hardware as a service because I'm the one building everything about this server. I'm even installing the operating system. I'm installing the applications. I'm setting up the network. I'm building it from the bottom up for everything associated with this particular system. So this is not like using Google Mail. What type of CPU is used for Google Mail? I don't know. How much network capacity is available on Google Mail? I don't know. How much memory is used in the servers that are used to support Google Mail? I don't know. I know none of those things. And I'm not supposed to know any of those things because Google Mail is software as a service where I don't configure, maintain, or manage any of those things. So instead, if you're looking at building out your own server, you're probably going to use infrastructure as a service to do that. So I like to break this out. This is a common diagram to break these out. If you had your own server that was in your data center and you managed everything about that server, it's a physical device, you would manage everything from the application, the data, the middleware, all the way down to the networking and storage on that system. But if you're using a cloud-based server, especially one for infrastructure as a service, you may or may not install the operating system or anything above that. You're certainly may not even be required to, but you may be installing the operating system. But if they're giving you the infrastructure, you're going to need to install everything else. So they're going to give you the network and the storage and the servers and the virtualization technologies, but you're responsible for taking advantage or for managing everything else. If it's platform as a service, or software as a service, the provider of the service handles everything. That's fantastic. Then you don't have to worry about it. They're taking care of all of the details. You just log in and use the service. And then platform as a service is sort of in the middle of this, where they are providing everything, including the middleware and the runtime piece, but you're going to need to layer the application right on top of that. So that's pretty useful to know where these different cloud models fit and know what functions fit into each of those individual categories. And that's why in this case, infrastructure as a service makes perfect sense for this. And 57% of you did indeed choose infrastructure as a service. There was no mention here on who's going to access this server. Is this a public server? Is it a private server? Is it only for one company? Is it used for multiple companies? Is it like professormesser.com where I'd like everybody in the world to have access to this? If I want everyone to have access to this, it's a public server. If I don't want everyone to have access to this, it's probably a private server, something we only use internally. But there was no mention in the question as to how this would be used. So the best description of this cloud model would probably not be private. It would probably not be community, where there's a group of folks that are managing the server and using it. Probably not be hybrid, where some of it is private and some of it is public, because we just don't know. We weren't given that information in the question. The only one we would really have to choose from is really SaaS, software as a service, versus IaaS for infrastructure as a service. And of course, with software as a service, you don't get to choose specific CPUs or memory or storage or network or operating system options. You're simply logging in and using the service. So the only answer here that really makes sense is the one that 57% of you have now chosen. Infrastructure as a service, answer E, really is the right answer. That's the one we wanted to know. That's the one that really locks in the idea of building everything customized that you would like for this particular server. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I'd love to send you an email where I digitally sign and certify that you were here to watch this 1 hour presentation. And to do that, you need to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. In that top or bottom, there's a link there for Contact Us. Hit the Contact Us link. It'll bring up a form. In that form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put April 2023. And in the bottom of the body of that message, put the super secret code word of the month. And we're going to make it a little different this time. Operating system options. Operating system options is the super secret code words of the month. So that's what we would put in. And you can, of course, put other things into that message as well. But make sure the term operating system options is on a line by itself so I can find it very quickly and get this back to you. Great way to do it. Be familiar with that process. Again, top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. You put in your name, your email address, in the subject line, put April 2023. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, operating system options. So you've got at least some of those available, and that's the ones you should use if you're planning to get that email. It usually takes me about a week or so to turn these around, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but it will get you eventually so that you'll be able to get access to that CEU certification. It's not something required if you're collecting CEUs, but it's something that might help if they decide to audit for those CEUs. So another one to kind of think about. So let's do another question. We have some time to fit another one in here. So let's do another one. This next question asks, a user's laptop randomly powers down after an hour of normal operation. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it incorrect boot device selected, poorly written application, incorrect monitor input, low memory condition, or overheating system? A user's laptop randomly powers down after an hour of normal operation. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it incorrect boot device selected, poorly written application, incorrect monitor input, low memory condition, overheating system? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Yeah, on the exam itself, some folks in the chat room were kind of asking a structural kind of question. On the exam, most of your multiple choice questions will ask you for a single answer. There'll be a radio button so you know it's a single answer. On questions where you are expected to answer multiple answers, the CompTIA exams have traditionally told you how many multiple answers you should choose. So they'll say pick 2 or pick 3 so you know exactly the right number. Another thing they do on these exams is if you don't pick 2 or pick 3, they will often tell you you didn't pick enough. They'll give you a warning. It says, no, you're supposed to pick 2 or 3. Have you done that? That would be something to work through as well. So another one that you kind of have to read the question, see what's being asked of you, and it will tell you exactly the number that is there that you need to choose from. On this particular set, I don't tend to do pick 2 or pick 3 on our live streams, but it is, of course, part of the my practice exams book because I want to give you the same feel and structure as an actual exam question, and I do put in a few of those actually in the book because you might get a few of those on an actual exam. So another important consideration if you're looking for a quality set of practice exams that really fits the style and tone of the actual exam, I think my practice exams book really fits the bill because I specifically wrote it that way. So let's try this question. This question asked, a user's laptop randomly powers down after an hour of normal operation. Maybe it's time you should just go home at that point. Maybe it's just telling you something. No, there's something else happening. And it asked, which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it that an incorrect boot device is selected? There's a poorly written application, an incorrect monitor input, a low memory condition, or an overheating system? Let's see what you chose for this question. 89% of you say that it's an overheating system. 7% said low memory condition, and then 2 and 1% for all of the other options. So does that make sense, though? Is that really where we should be focusing our efforts if a system just randomly powers down? Did we all choose the wrong one? Let's look at the answer, and it is indeed overheating. That's what we were looking for. A system is not able to put air through properly. Maybe some of the air vents, like this one, are covered with dust, and so air is not able to get through and properly cool the system. That's one that's a definite problem. Make sure you have a look at your laptop. Make a look at your have a look at your desktop computers. Really see if you're getting some dust buildup. Get rid of that now. It'll simply get worse and get worse very, very quickly. Laptops are a little bit more challenging to be able to get all of the dust out. You may not want to spray an air sprayer inside of a building, but maybe outside. To really understand what these happen to be. So I think in this case, overheating is an obvious version of it. But why is that the best answer? Because this asked what the most likely reason is. Why does it fit overheating system? Well, we already know why overheating system can cause these problems. If it blocks the airflow, your system will warm up inside. It'll reach a certain temperature and your system will automatically power off so that it doesn't damage any of the sensitive electronic components. They can overheat. They can damage themselves if they overheat. So our motherboards are smart enough to monitor those temperatures and power down if it gets to a point where it becomes dangerous. Certainly you don't want your system damaged just because there was some dust on a fan. Other options that are here, 7% said a low memory condition, and although there are cases where a low memory condition could potentially cause a system to restart, it probably is not going to cause a system to power down. That's our real clue here, that it is not something to do with an application or with the resources inside of your system, because it just powers off. Now, if there was an option here that said the power supply is faulty, okay, that's another one we can choose. We can think if that's the right answer. But in this case, low memory conditions will commonly simply put a message on your screen that says out of memory. We're low on memory. You need to free up some memory. It will give you some prompting on the screen. It won't just power down your system. That's not the way a low memory condition commonly manifests itself. We also have 2% that said an incorrect boot device is selected. That's something you would select in the BIOS. And obviously, if the incorrect boot device was selected, your system's never going to get booted anyway. So you would never be at a point where you would be even studying or working with the system for an hour until it powers off, because it never got started. So that doesn't even make sense given the problem we're dealing with. A poorly written application, well, we got plenty of those, don't we? But a poorly written application, although technically could power down your system if it's written so poorly that it writes directly to Windows and says, please power down your computer, which is possible. That would be a kind of a super bad written application. I think we know how bad that application was at that point. That's not generally how poorly written applications will manifest themselves either, so probably not the best choice to use. And lastly, an incorrect monitor input, which will simply have your screen remain black the whole time. There's no video input to the monitor. So you're obviously not going to be able to use your computer for that hour time frame because you can't see anything. Well, that doesn't match the question that we have here either. The answer, an overheating system, answer E, is one that 89% of you chose. And indeed, that is the answer you should have selected through all of these. An overheating system can cause enormous types of problems on your computer, and ones you should really think about, especially if you're getting into the world of working through these technical problems. Overheating can be a significant problem, but an easy fix, because all you have to do is either fix the fan that's not working or clean the vents on your system. That's an easy fix. Just vacuum them out and you're done. Problem solved. It's like working magic, and suddenly your system is able to work so much better. I ran into a problem with that on one of the laptops I was using. It was just getting slower and slower, and it was not performing very well. And I'm thinking, why is the CPU slowing itself down to prevent heat? And I thought, oh, I haven't cleaned it in quite some time. Clean it out. Suddenly it's like getting a new laptop. So something that might help you as well. These questions we've gone through today are extensive. There are a lot of questions to go through with a lot of different topics. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a practice exams book that goes through all of these types of topics, gives you a simulation of a 90-question CompTIA exam, and it does that 3 different exams in my book. So there's 90 questions in each of those 3 separate exams. It is 389 pages. It is a big book. That's the book. So practice exams, there's a lot of detail. You'll understand why in just a moment, why it's so big. There's both multiple choice and performance-based questions here, but I put a lot of detail in this because I think that the practice questions you do are a huge learning opportunity, and probably more so when you get the question wrong. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. This is my practice exams book. We have it up right here. So let's do a question from the book. Let's go to practice exam C. We'll do question C6. Let's see how much you were remembering with a questioner, like specifically chose a question we did before. Let's do a different one. Here, we'll do the second, C7. Because we did that one before. This question asks, a network engineer is installing a device allowing wireless devices to access the wired Ethernet network. Which of the following would best describe this technology? Is that a hub, a managed switch, a VLAN, or an access point? And then you would choose between those 4. Now, because it's a PDF, I can go into my PDF reader and annotate if I wanted to select different parts of it or highlight different parts of it or work through different parts of it. This is one that does come in really handy. So it's one where you can really work through what you think the right answer, what you think the right answer might be. But also, this has links in it because it is a PDF if you're using the digital version. If you have the book, if you wanted to know the answer, you would go to page 287. Right now on like page 272. Or if you want the details, you go to page 296. And you can, of course, page up to that page and read through the different answers that are there. If you have the PDF, you simply click where it says the details, and it takes you to that page. So these are the details that give you the question again. You're installing a device allowing wireless devices to access the wired Ethernet network. You've got hub, managed switch, VLAN, and access point, and it tells you the answer is D, access point, and it tells you why that's the right answer, gives you an explanation, which is pretty common on questions like this, where they will tell you why that's the right answer. My problem is I never get the right answer, at least not initially. I answer something else, and I want to know why is the answer I chose not the right answer. All you told me is why the right answer is right. I want to know why the wrong answer is wrong. So in my practice exams book, every incorrect answer is described as to why it is incorrect. So you can see why is it not hub? I'll explain to you why it's not a hub. Why isn't it a managed switch? I will explain why it's not a managed switch. And why is it not a VLAN? I'll explain why it's not a VLAN. So that way you can really work through the details of understanding all of the technologies asked about, especially if you got it right. Make sure you read the wrong answers, because on your exam, they might ask a question about a managed switch. They might ask a question about a hub or about a VLAN. You're going to need to know more about those technologies, and the wrong answers to this question may give you the details you need when you finally get to the actual exam. And if you're also sometimes like me, where you read the question and you're thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't even understand the question, much less understanding the answers. If you keep scrolling down at the bottom of this list of answers, I give you a link back to the video where this question was created from. So you can see absolutely that this is 220.11.01 Objective 2.2 network devices, and there's a link that goes directly to the devices, or if you have your mobile phone, you can simply use your camera to scan the QR code, and you'd be able to pull up that video right there. Makes it very, very easy. Now, if you'd like this book, it's all on my website. ProfessorMesser.com/core1PE is a great place to go. You can also find it in the pull-down menus on my website. And if you get this with my course notes, you bundle them together, you actually save a little bit of money. So no reason to buy them individually and pay more. Buy them together. You save a little bit of cash by buying the course notes and the practice exams together, all on my website. And of course, I have both the digital editions, which you've seen on my screen, and the physical editions, which I have in my hand. And just like the course notes, if you get the physical edition of any of my training materials, they always come with the digital edition PDFs for free. All of that available on the Professor Messer website, something you can also have a look at, something that might help you with your studies. All of the things we went through today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. I've told you over and over and over how important these objectives are because they contain everything you need to know to pass this exam. When you walk in the door of the exam, they give you a full set of the bullets that you'll be expected to know. So, for example, section 1.1 of the exam objectives, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, including hardware and device replacement for battery, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard disk drive, solid state drives, HD, SSD replacement, wireless cards. We have to know about physical privacy and security components, including biometrics and near field scanner features. Those are just the bullets for the first section of the first domain. Now we go to section 1.2 and 1.3 and 1.4 and so on, and you can see all of the very detailed and important things that you need to know for this exam. CompTIA has done a very good job at telling you exactly what you need to know. This is a great reference when you get into this, so you can really understand what the different options might be and things that you should expect on the exam. They don't deviate much from, if at all, from these exam objectives. And I often tell people, if you know every bullet of the exam objectives, you're going to walk in the exam and you're going to crush it. You will knock it out of the park because they really don't go very far outside the scope of exactly what's in these objectives. You know it all, you'll do just fine on these exams. It's a great test. We do one of these study groups for A+ Core 1 every month. We also do a Core 2 study group every month. And so if you are here on the 4th of April and you would like to attend our Core 2 live stream, we've already got one arranged for the 6th of April. So as we sit here on a Tuesday, we're doing this live. Come on back on Thursday for the Core 2 study group, and we'll do another one of these with Core 2 topics. And of course, next month, we have the same thing going on May the 2nd and May the 4th. At least that's where we think it is now. If you want to check back with us, sometimes these dates can change. Sometimes, you know, the chaos of my life gets in the way and I have to move things around. And when I do that, I always update the online calendars. So if you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you can very easily see when the next live event is going to be. And if it changes there first, and it changes in the events channel that's on our Discord. So 2 places you can go to find that information. You'll always know when the next live event is going to be. Plenty to step through as we go through the different options available. A nice place to be. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A already. Can you believe that? Now, instead of me asking you the questions, I want you to ask me the questions. So we're going to open up the chat room. I'm going to take questions from the chat room over the next hour. Stick around for that in our after show, coming up immediately after this. Also, some folks in the chat room where we've been asking about vouchers. Of course, we have discounted vouchers if you live in the U.S., Canada, and U.S. territories. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/vouchers, and they're discounted. Don't pay full price on the CompTIA site. Get your voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams on our website. There's plenty more questions to go through there. That will certainly keep you busy. And if you wanted to help us, there's even ways you can help without spending 1 penny. You can simply go to professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Instagram and subscribe to any of those so that you can get our daily pop quiz questions or know when the next videos may be posted, especially these live streams. Well, that certainly gives us something to think about. I know that as we've gone through these questions today, maybe you've gotten some ideas and some new things to consider for your studies. I'll be taking plenty more questions over the next hour. Stick around for that. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and thanks for being here on today's Core 1 220 1101 A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Let me take a sip of a beverage. Now we can switch things around here on the screens in front of me, and I will switch things around online. Now, instead of me asking you the questions, now you get to ask me the questions. This is the after show. So this is the part of our show where I just like to take questions about things that you're interested in. It may be CompTIA A+ related. It might be technology related. It might be not related to anything in technology. Maybe asking what I did over the weekend, which I got to tell you is not exciting. Don't even bother asking that one. But this is a place where if you have questions about the things we went through or questions about the process for the exam, this is a great place to do it. The way that you would ask these questions is using the chat that's available probably on the screen that you're watching right now. If you're on YouTube, there's a YouTube chat. That's the one I'm watching on my screen. And if you are on my website at professormesser.com/live, there's also a chat there. It's actually the YouTube chat that I've embedded on that screen. So it's the same chat. And be able to get there. So always something to go through and available for you to ask questions on. Just put it into the chat and I'll be kind of cycling through the different questions that are there and things you need to look at. Let's follow up on some of the voucher questions that came up earlier. The Death Eater Kid, 2004. You may want to pick the right side there. Death Eater Kid says the voucher includes both 1101 and 1102, right? Well, those are two exams. A single voucher is used to sit for a single exam. So if you're taking both the 1101 and the 1102, you need two vouchers to be able to do that. A voucher for each exam. So that's an important consideration as you go through this. So I have a number of people, in fact, if you go to my site, it even asks you when you're checking out, do you want one voucher or do you want two vouchers? Because there's a slight cost savings when you buy both of them at the same time, but you have to have two of them ultimately to be able to take both of the A+ exams. That's just how CompTIA does it. I don't have control over the voucher system, but that is the process that people go through when they're getting ready. If you're taking your Network Plus exam, single voucher. If you're taking your Security Plus exam, single voucher. But for A+, two exams, you got it, two vouchers. So that's the way you would do it. That's the important part. And that's really the best way to kind of approach it as you step through these. Other questions as we go through and working sort of a question about these details. This is probably one that goes back to the question I asked earlier about really understanding what options are available from the CompTIA exam objectives. This is Nigel that asks, how far or deeply into subnetting should we go for the 1101 exam? And that's one I think is a pretty good question for the exam objectives. So let's go over to the exam objectives. Let me type some things in my switcher. Let's move this over here. So let's go to the networking section. The networking section for the 1101 exam is the 2.0 domain that is aptly named networking. So let's look for subnetting in this list of things. Well, we have ports. Well, that's not what we're looking for. Section 2.2 is hardware, like routers, switches, firewalls, and that type of thing. That's not in there. The next section is protocols for wireless. That's not in there. So subnetting is not part of wireless. It's really part of IP. 2.4 is summarize services provided by networked hosts. We don't have anything in there about subnetting. Section 2.5, given a scenario, install and configure basic wired/wireless small office, home office networks. And we finally have a mention here of something at least networking related with addresses. IPv4 with private and public addresses, IPv6, API-PA, static, dynamic, and gateway. No mention of subnetting. And no mention of subnetting in 2.6, which is primarily DNS and DHCP. And 2.7 is about network types, not about subnetting. 2.8 about networking tools, not about subnetting. And we're done with networking. So my answer for this one, pretty good answer, which is there's no mention of subnetting on the 1101 exam objectives. Therefore, don't worry about subnetting. You're not going to have to worry about it for the exam. The part of this exam, and as it relates to addressing, really focuses on how do you configure and troubleshoot addresses that have already been configured on a system, or how do you add IP addressing to be configured on a system, which in this particular case does not require you to do any type of subnetting, to break down CIDR block notation, to do the binary math. You don't have to do any of that for the 1101. Don't worry, once you get to Network Plus, you'll have plenty of subnetting to do. But for the purposes of your A+, there's no mention in the exam objectives. Therefore, there's no studying you should do on that particular topic. It is a waste of your time to be able to work through all of those. Mr. Blar in the chat room says, buy your voucher at least 24 hours before. And that's not a bad tip with the $6 Canadian Super Chat. Thank you so much, Mr. Blar, on that. It's always a good idea to get your vouchers well in advance to when you would like to register for the exam. Usually when you purchase a voucher, certainly the vouchers that you purchase on my site are good for a year. So you can schedule to take your exam sometime in the next 12 months after purchasing the vouchers for your certification, but you have to take and complete your exam by the expiration date. So you can't wait a year and then finally schedule your exam, but schedule your exam 6 months into the future. You can't do that. You have to take your exam by the expiration date of the voucher. So although buying your voucher early means that you're ready to use that voucher whenever you're ready to schedule your exam, also keep in mind that you don't want to buy it too early. So that usually I get vouchers out. I mentioned on my website that I provide you with vouchers and get them into your hands within 24 hours. That's my service level agreement to you. But in reality, I usually process them about 2 times a day, usually in the morning and the evening. So usually you get them in about 12 hours or less, but it's not a guarantee. 24 hours is an absolute guarantee. And I have had people send me notes and say, hey, I'm not able to get my exam. I'm not able to book my exam because I don't have my voucher yet. Where's my voucher? I'm like, well, you just bought it 5 minutes ago. You'll get it sometime in the next 24 hours, but most of the time I'm able for those folks. Maybe we can expedite it if I'm in a place where I'm able to do that, because there's a process we have to go through to get those new voucher codes from CompTIA that have the right expiration date on them and provide them to you. So there's a little bit of moving parts behind the scenes. It's nothing too horrible or exciting, but if you plan ahead, it certainly helps me provide you with vouchers in a timely manner as well. So I think that's the real key and working through it. So maybe it's something that can help you as you work through when you should buy the voucher and when you don't want to get the voucher. But we do a pretty good job of getting them to you pretty darn quickly. Other questions. Here's one. This is more of an Inception type question. Is this the after show? I'm not sure if you're asking because you're appalled or if you're just wondering if it is the after show. This is indeed the after show. The reason I'm not asking questions right now is definitely the after show, which is your opportunity, of course, to ask questions. So if you have a question you would like me to answer, this is the place to do it. Just put it into the chat. Hopefully I'll be able to see it because there's a lot of stuff in the chat right now going by very, very quickly. Sometimes hard to keep track of all of the different things that are in the chat right now. This is a pretty good frequently asked question, I think. Is a video course and the CompTIA A+ book enough to pass the exams? I've been studying for weeks, feel like there are still things I don't know. Well, that's sort of describes everyone's career in IT, where they still feel like there are things I don't know. After 20 years or plus in this career, there are still things I don't know. So that's sort of normal. The idea, though, about what do you use to pass the exams is an important one. I mentioned in the very first video of my course that you should really have a good book, a good video series, some hands-on labs, and practice exams. Those are kind of the 4 elements to make the best possible study environment for you, but they aren't all 4 required in any way. Some people just get a book, they read the book, they go take the exam. That's just how they like to study. Some people hate reading through books and would prefer watching a video course. And there are people that tell me all the time, I must get an email every week, at least, from people that say, I just watched your videos. I walked into the exam. I passed my exam. And indeed, I designed my video course so that someone could do that if they were familiar enough with the underlying technologies. But in most cases, I think people really should have a good book. They should get a good video series. They should get plenty of hands-on. They should go through plenty of practice questions. And that's just another good way to kind of focus on understanding what are the right things, what are the wrong things to study. You should have a pretty good idea of what you use best and how you like to study. And I think that's another good way to approach your study process. In the chat room, there's some folks even making some mention of this because somebody mentioned about taking both exams on the same day, which universally is a bad idea in general. There's very, very, very few cases where you would ever want to register and take both exams on the same day. There's very little overlap between the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. So very little of Core 1 ever shows up in Core 2. Very little of Core 2 ever shows up in Core 1. In fact, there's almost nothing between those two that shows up in the other. They are designed to be self-contained exams. For that reason, I highly recommend that you study for one exam at a time. You study for just one of those exams. It doesn't matter which one you do first. Pick one of those exams, study everything about that exam, understand all of the exam objectives, go through all of the videos for that single exam, do some hands-on for that single exam, take practice questions for that single exam, and then go take the exam and pass it. Once you've passed it, you can push all that to the side and now change your focus to the other exam. Almost universally, people who have come to my website after failing these exams who took both of them in one day are saying, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. That was a huge mistake. And I have to agree with that. Don't do that. Don't go through that. And people in the chat room are even saying, oh no, separate days, dude. Don't do that to yourself. It's not necessary. It's way too much information to learn at the same time, and it effectively splits your focus between both exams, which means you're not putting the right emphasis or right amount of time into the topics you need to know for this exam. So I would agree, make sure you do them separately, one at a time. Other questions. Let's keep going through our list and see what other ones. There were some where do you get hands-on labs? Speaking of labs, since I brought it up, what about these? There are a number of companies that make hands-on labs. CompTIA is one of those. I really like CompTIA labs, by the way. I've already gone through them. I've tested them. I've demonstrated them on my site. I've got licenses for those that I've used them personally. They are a brand new engine, the latest engine for these exams that probably goes a little bit further than some of the engines I've seen in the past. No question. I was so impressed when I saw these for the first time, and I told them, yeah, you really, really want to let everybody know about these labs because they really are high quality labs, not only for the Core 1, but also the Core 2, which of course goes into Windows and operating systems and things you need to know. It's all online. It's all virtualized. You're not on a rail. You can kind of go off track if you want to learn more about the operating system, and everything's available to you. So they make it as easy as possible to use, and I really like them. That's why they're on my site. I wouldn't put anything on my site that I did not personally think was a useful study guide or study material. So if you go to my site under the recommended A+ materials, there is a list of labs there that you can work through. I think that's a good place to go. Now, some other folks here were talking about taking the test online, which I think is really useful. Some folks up earlier in the chat were talking about what if I can't get out of my house? What if I don't want to get out of my house? What if I want to maybe take this exam at home? Plenty of options to take it online as well. I personally really recommend you go to a testing center. Obviously, the worries that we had in the year 2000 are well behind us at this point. We can now go back out. We don't have to worry about a strange virus trying to take us down. We pretty much have now realized we're all okay. So we can go out in public and talk to other human beings again. And that's why I think the centers that have the tests ready to go can simplify things, and it's a lot less stressful to do it that way. But some people like to take their exams at home or may not have the choice of taking an exam in their local area. So instead of driving hours down the road, you can easily find an exam in your area and just step through the exam that way and do it at home. It's all online, and whether your voucher is good for either an online exam or an exam in person, it's exactly the same voucher. You just get to decide how you would like that one to go. How do you want to take your exam? Would you rather take it at home, or would you rather take it in a testing center? I will tell you that make sure you read the rules of taking your exam at home very carefully. They are a little bit, in some cases, a lot different than the rules you have at a testing center. They're much more stringent at home because obviously it's your house. It's not a testing center. So they try to make it as close to having the same security as a testing center, but in your house. So someone's watching you the whole time over your camera. They're able to listen in to what's in your room. They're able to chat with you, and they're able to cancel the exam because they are proctoring and watching you as you take the exam. So there's a set of requirements. You have to have a camera. You have to have the ability for them to hear you. There's certain things you can have on your desk. There's certain things you cannot have on your desk. You can only use one monitor. There's a lot of different rules around that. So make sure you read through the rules and become familiar with those. It's pretty useful. But you just have to be aware of that so you're not surprised when it comes to exam time. Really recommend you read through the CompTIA subreddit because people who have taken their exams online have some great stories to tell about what went well and what did not go well. And if you can plan for what did not go well, it's not going to be a surprise when you sit down on the day of your exam. Other questions. This is more of a generic question, I think, although it's about a specific exam. Famo asks, will you be doing a course on the CySA? Which I like your phrasing there, by the way. Please, because that's what I call it. I call it the CySA. Right now, it's on. I have a list of what I want to do next. It's a big list, as you can imagine, and things are always moving up and down the list in priority. CySA Plus is on that list. Is it one that I can commit to and say, yeah, we're doing it? Nope, not. I never commit until I'm actually starting the process. So right now there are no immediate plans for CySA Plus, but it is on our list. It's a popular certification. People like it. People ask about it. And so I do want to at least give people the option of what they want. But again, I have to also look at other requirements on our side, the amount of time, the things that are necessary to get one of these exams in front of you, one of these training courses. There's other parts of this, but I like the CySA Plus. It would be a great certification exam to do. Just nothing that's it's not on the calendar yet. We'll put it that way. But I never say never, almost never say never. As some of you have been watching for a while know that there are times when I say never, but for CySA Plus, it's still on the list. So very useful. Other questions. Let's keep going through our list of questions. This is an interesting one, and it's a good question to ask. Do all IT jobs require background checks? If someone has felonies from almost 20 years ago, would it be pointless to attempt to get a job in IT considering background checks? Asking for a friend. This is a common question. I get these questions a lot from folks, and it is one that is different depending on where you go. So practically all jobs these days will run a background check. It is very unusual to have any type of job where they don't run some type of background check on you. They want to understand that you are a good person to have as an employee, that there's no financial problems they need to worry about, that there's no legal problems that they need to worry about. They want to verify some of the information you put on your resume and your application to make sure it matches what's on the background check. There's a lot of good reasons to do these background checks. Some employers are very particular about felonies, especially if you're going in and working for a governmental agency, especially at the federal government. You kind of have to work through some of those. It's not a deal breaker, but it certainly has a large impact on the decision-making process. Private companies have more leeway. They get to decide themselves how they handle felonies, especially felonies from 20 years ago. That's a long time ago. So I think one of the best things you can do is to pose these questions to people who are hiring in those companies. Before you even send them an application, ask them, hey, what's your policy for people that may have a felony from 20 years ago? Do you still hire those people? And they will tell you, well, nope, we have a standing order, no felonies, no employment. So you know that's not a place you should go. Or they might say, well, if it's this kind of felony, then that's fine with us. But if it's this kind of felony, not so much. They get to make those decisions. Or they may not care if after a certain time frame, maybe they have a 10-year cutoff and 20 years is fine. It really depends on whether the company's public or private or how it's managed and who's doing the managing. So it's really a question you need to pose to the single organization themselves. Verify it with them. Just send them a note. If you're not sure who to send it to, you want to send it to someone in HR. Usually you can find someone in HR on LinkedIn, or if not, there may be a standard email that you can send things in when you're sending in an application. That would be a good email to send that one in, just to see what their philosophy is on those. I think that would be very useful. So just another thing to think about, because a lot of people are in that scenario where it really would be nice to know how the employer would react for that type of problem. So have a look at those. Maybe we can understand more about it. This is kind of a timely question, so I'll at least approach this when Garrett asks, hey, what's your thought on Testout? Testout is a third-party company. They're a company that makes third-party training materials for certifications like CompTIA, Cisco, Microsoft, and others. They have an interesting lab scenario, and they have a very big footprint in the K through 12 and some college levels here in the U.S. So very big in educational facilities. Testout's done a very good job at getting into the schools and having the schools use their technology to be able to train on these topics. One of the things you may not realize, since you did call them Testout, is they're no longer Testout. I guess they are technically still Testout, but they were purchased by CompTIA last month. So Testout is now CompTIA, a fully owned subsidiary, if you will. At least that's the way it's being handled at the moment. What are they going to do with Testout? Is it going to be integrated into the CompTIA name? Is it going to remain Testout? Is it going to be some hybrid of those two? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But they're generally well respected in the K through 12 categories. They don't have a lot of training materials for individuals. At least it's not priced that way to support individuals getting their certifications. But it is a very common company for certifications. And I guess they did so well in K through 12 that CompTIA bought them. That's how well they did. So they're now CompTIA in the K through 12. That is one that I want to say we didn't see it coming, but this particular industry of training and certifications and making people smarter and getting people jobs is one that has had a lot of acquisitions and movement in the last 10 years, and we just continue to see those things happening. So that kind of makes sense to be able to work through those and have a familiarity with those. I think that's pretty useful, by the way, to have that Testout suddenly show up. I thought that was pretty interesting, and have those there. Let's keep going through the questions that you have sent in. There's a lot of things that have come in about these. Hey, if somebody brought it up, and I think this is a setup, but we're going to do it anyway. We have a question. What are my thoughts on CEH? Somebody asked about CySA Plus earlier. This is another common request. The ethical hacker, certified ethical hacker is the CEH. This is the only certification where I have specifically said I will never do a CEH training course. I don't think that CEH would even allow me to if I wanted to, but that's besides the point. I'm not going to. And most of the reason is because traditionally the company that has managed the CEH certification has not done a great job at protecting people's personal identification. I would recommend that you Google CEH certification and Snowden, and you'll see a picture of his passport that was stolen from this company that manages the CEH certification because they did not properly secure people's private information, and that information was obtained by the hackers. They were attacked and they took that data, was exfiltrated, and then published publicly. So if you would like your personal information potentially put on the internet for everyone to see, go take the CEH. That's the real reason I don't support that one. There are some other reasons also that are relatively minor and unnecessary to describe here, but it's one where I'm not going to take this exam. I would not trust this company with my information. Why would I ever expect you to have that same level of trust? If I'm not going to trust them, I'm not going to create content where I'm expecting you to trust them. So no, we're not doing CEH ever. ever, ever. If I end up doing CEH, then you know someone has replaced me with a facsimile thereof. Something's going on. They're coming to take us away. I don't know. I'll never do CEH. So not a problem. Not going to be an issue for me and to work through that. CEH is not one that I will ever work through. It's sort of a shame, really, because the content of the CEH, the exam objectives themselves, aren't bad. But why wouldn't you just take CySA? That's relatively similar to CEH in at least somewhat style and form, if not structure. So it's close enough. And I know that a lot of companies like CEH. They want you to take CEH. And if you really, 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 really want to, go take CEH. Maybe nothing will happen now. Crossing my fingers. What's the worst that could happen? Just all your information would be released to the world and people would be able to have access to all of your accounts and personal information till the end of time. Other than that, what's to worry about? Maybe they've learned their lesson and everything is good now. We just don't know. Oh, the cup I mentioned earlier, that RFID. Okay, so now I have to go get the cup. So we have to hold on, everybody. I think I know where it is. So this will take just a moment. I'm going to go out of camera range. There we go. Where is it? Oh, that just fell down. Was that the cup? It was. Okay. All right. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that, Daniela, in the chat room. Show us the cup. We got the cup. Here's the cup. So there it is. And that's my advertisement for Coca-Cola. This one is from Walt Disney World. That's where this technology was implemented. It says, we keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things. That's a quote from Walt Disney at Walt Disney World. So the way that they manage, can you get a soda? Well, you take your soda and you put it on the machine, and underneath the cup, see that? There it is. That's the RFID chip. It's going to be blurry when I do this, so it's not going to help very much when I do that. I'll take a better picture, maybe put it on Instagram. If you look at it, there we go. So you can see where they have a little outline there that's sort of drawn in, and there's this tiny, tiny little chip. The little square, the little black square next to it, that's actually just reflecting the black in the room. That's a little silver RFID chip. It's sitting right there. I'll get my macro lens and put that on my Instagram, and I'll put that in the YouTube video description. Lori, remind me to put that in the YouTube video description. So you put it on the drink reader, and it reads the RFID chip in the cup and knows exactly how much of the diet soda you got in there. And then you drink it all, and then you come back and put it on there, and it doesn't work. In fact, when you take your cup and you put it there for the first time and you hit the button, it makes a sound of harps and magic and pixie dust. And then when you go back and you put it on there, it just doesn't work. There's no noises at all. It doesn't just put any soda into your cup because it knows that you were there based on the RFID chip that is on the bottom of the cup that you got at Walt Disney World. How about that, huh? I have to get that photo and put it on there for you so you're able to work through those. That's pretty easy one to do. I wonder how much it costs to have that extra RFID chip on the bottom and all those readers on all of the soda machines. I want to say that I think it's still that way. I have to look next time I go to Disney and see if they're still using that technology on their cups, and see that. This is really the challenge. Is how do we get around the cups with the RFID? We'll have to find out how to hack the soda machines now. I don't think they'll take too kindly to that at the most magical place in the world. Other questions. Let's kind of step through some others that are specific to CompTIA. This is a good one. It says, hey, Prof, can I get a job with Core 2 certification and what level? Well, probably Core 2 by itself, not going to help you very much. You really need the A+ certification if the employer is one looking for the A+. So you'll need to pass the Core 1 and the Core 2 to earn your A+ certification. And if an employer is looking for the A+, well, then there you go. Now you know exactly where that might come from, where you might be able to use that. And usually it's an entry-level position. This is one where you're getting a position at the very beginning of the IT career. So you are service technician, help desk technician, maybe doing network operations center or security operations center, first level calls. You're answering and distributing where the calls are going, that type of thing. So I think that's really the interesting part of this, is that you have to match your particular certifications, the credentials you hold, with what an employer might be expecting. So you need to find places where those match. So look at the jobs in your area. Look to see jobs in your area that you would qualify for and see what they're asking for. Are they asking for an A+? Then an A+ makes sense. Are they asking for Network Plus? Are they asking for Security Plus? Some employers, especially those that work with the U.S. federal government, would rather you have a Security Plus certification than an A+. So that's the time when you need to make a decision on what direction you go with your certification studies, so that you'll know, I don't need to do A+. They're not asking for that in my area. Most of the employers would like me to have a Security Plus or an Amazon or a Microsoft or a Cisco or whatever it happens to be. Look at the jobs that are available, match those things up. That's really one of the best ways to make all of that happen. There are some places that do not have any requirements for certifications. In that case, you don't need any. So make sure you look at the jobs. Employers are funny. Sometimes they want lots of credentials. Sometimes they don't want any. I will tell you that if they're not asking for any credentials, they're probably paying a little less. Because if they want somebody with credentials, they know they're going to be paying a little more for those people. There are good reasons to do both. There are good business reasons to hire both types of folks. You just need to find out which one they're interested in and which one they'll do. That's the way it works. Let's keep going in here. People do ask this from time to time. Am I a gamer? Am I gaming? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm on the Xbox. I try to get an hour of Xbox time in a night. I like to game sitting back. I don't like to game sitting forward. So I don't tend to do PC gaming, because you have to be at a chair at a desk with a keyboard and a mouse, and that's just too much for me. At the end of the day, I just like to blow things up for an hour and then go to bed. It's a simple life. Kind of get those stresses of the day out. So if you're on Xbox, we can talk. If somewhere else, no, not so much. At least not currently. I tend to go back and forth, it seems. I tend to go, no, I'll play EVE Online for a month. No, we'll go back to the Xbox. So I sometimes will hop around a little bit to do that. How much did I pay for the cup? The cup was free. You pay for everything. The soda is what you paid for. They do have another cup. They have a mug, an insulated mug if you're staying in a resort. The insulated mug also has an RFID chip in it, but they know when you get the mug, it's good for 4 days. And they know the first time you use it, now your counter starts up, and it's good for 4 days or whatever the length of time that mug is good for, so that you can always take your mug down, fill it up. It's free refills during that time frame. So that's why they have those RFID tags. It's not just for this paper cup. It's for those insulated mugs that you can take home with you once you're done at the parks. Some of you got some, right? Those insulated mugs are great. They come in really handy. So that's what another thing to think about. For the RFID anyway. Kind of an unusual use case, but it's kind of a lot of fun. Glad I had that in there. Another good question. We got the hard-hitting questions today. How did I get that tan? Well, it's easy. You take the camera and you adjust the color of the camera to give me a nice golden tone. Because I am white as the driven snow. I sit in this dark room all day. There's no light. I have to take vitamin D because there's no way I'm getting it from the sun. I'm that person. So it only looks this way because I have control of the camera. Highly recommend that for anybody. Control the camera, you control everything. That's the key. Make sure you get your own camera. Am I a baseball fan? Baseball? Not really. Not really a sport, I wouldn't call myself a sports fan. I can appreciate baseball. I played baseball. I played basketball. Played a lot of basketball growing up, so that was probably my sport. I had during the summer I would go to basketball camp. Loved it. Just a lot of great time, and still shoot. I still shoot ball around, but not competitively. I'm not going to run up and down. Let me rephrase this. I'm not going to run. Period. I'm just going to grab the ball and shoot it at the basket. That's my level of sports. Now, watching sports, I do like to watch sports when I have time, but I rarely have time. I love cricket. Unusual for here in the States. Great sport to watch. I like it more than baseball, I think. But there's just something about organized sports in the United States. It's big. A lot of football is great. Basketball is great. Baseball is great because it's so big that everybody has something to talk about. So I spend a lot of my time writing content. Every bit of time I've got, I want to create some content for what we're doing here. So I just sort of ran out of time to watch some of the other sports. So as some of you have watched my study groups in the past, you know that I just go with a set of standard answers. When somebody says, "Did you see the game?" And my response is always, "Yeah, the turnovers will kill you. Yeah, great defense there near the end." You know, there's things you can just say that are always correct. And that's usually what I will do. So we'll keep the conversation going. But if you have that conversation with me, rest assured I have no idea what happened in that game. I just have no clue. I don't even watch Super Bowl. I lose interest. Oh, was that today? Oh, okay. I just have no idea to work through them. So that's unfortunately, that's the way it works. For those asking in the chat room about games, currently I'm back on Diablo 3. I guess it's because Diablo 4 is coming out. Already pre-ordered. I know you're not supposed to pre-order. It's wrong to pre-order. You should not pre-order. I totally pre-ordered that game. And so that's my next big one. Hopefully it will not take, if we suddenly wondering where did Professor Messer go? Well, Diablo 4 came out. So we don't know what's going to happen there. Will I still be around? Will I have there? Those of you that know that we are a Florida company, I am based in Florida. I live in Florida. This company is in Florida. We'll never leave Florida. I've never left Florida in my life. We do have great sunshine. We have a fantastic weather in Florida, and I just don't go outside in it. There's a little spot where I go from my office back into the house that's outside. So I get 5.5 seconds of sun each time I go back and forth. That's plenty, right? We don't need more than that. I just stay in this dark room. Now, in reality, there are windows in this room. There are sliding doors in this room. I open up the curtains and there's a lot of light in here. It's not as bad as it seems, but I just rarely get out of there. Yep, not a green screen. That's real back there. I don't have anything to throw it at this time. Normally I have a piece of paper I can just throw back there, but no, that's real. That's my real house. That's my real room. Those are real bricks. Those real stone. Actually is real stone. There you go. So at least you can see. We just went through the winter, and the winter I did have the fireplace on. It's a gas fireplace, but a fireplace nonetheless. Pretty nice to have it there, but it's real. It's not a green screen. I would like to kind of simplify the background, though. I think it's a little involved. We may be doing a makeover of the studio. We'll have to work on that and see what we want to do with the background. I want to simplify things on the background. So we will see what changes with that in the future, if at all. I may decide once I look into that that's not what I want to do. But we'll figure it out in getting that. Yeah, I know the folks that are the Diablo folks. They're out here. Yeah, we got the griffs and trying to make it happen. I've got lots more gear I need. I got to do some. got to get the ancients. I got to get everything up to the latest specs. All of that. It's a constant job that's there. We'll have to figure it out. Yeah, maybe we should. I've even toyed with this and how bad it would be. Yeah, what if at night when I did the hour of streams that I would just put it on Twitch and we'll do Twitch for an hour? Just an awful idea. Just a horrible, horrible idea. And I will never do that. I promise you. Let's just focus on IT and I think we'll all be happier. I think that's all we need to do is doing that. Some folks leaving Florida, well, we'll miss you, but I can't say that wouldn't be too bad if a couple people maybe left the state a little bit. It's getting a little busy here. It's getting a little populous, getting a lot of folks on the road. Either that, or I think you should get a job working at home. I think everybody should get a job working at home and get off the roads. I think that'd be fantastic to be able to have that. This is let's go with the meat of the question, which is, are milkshakes proven to increase cognitive ability when studying for certifications? I think this is a loaded question. I'm not sure why I think that. I would say banana milkshakes makes sense. I think that makes sense that would give you more cognitive ability, but that's just me. I think traditional chocolate and vanilla may be a little bit of that. So yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. That is all of my scientific knowledge and all of the knowledge that I have gained in my career of doing nothing in the medical field really believes that milkshakes can help you with your exam. So I'm going with that. Well, you can see why I'm sticking with IT. Notice that that works. Other questions. Let's keep going down the list of things. Do I hang a sock by the fireplace for Christmas? You have the best questions. Let's play. Not anymore. Nope. We're kind of past that point to be able to do that. But it is nice to have the fireplace in the office. I will say that. And having that there. It does come in handy in the winters. In this part of Florida that I'm in, it does tend to get cold in the winter. So it's nice to have something to warm things up in here. And this is a relatively small studio. So we can really get a lot warmed up all at once in here just by turning on that particular very nice and warm fireplace back there. It's pretty nice. Other questions. This is pretty good one. I've had to do this myself, not because I was moving to a different state, but well, let me tell you the story. The question is, anyone know how to find a job in a different state? There are a few ways to do this. Obviously, it's easier than ever online to do this, especially because you can now go to LinkedIn or Dice or Indeed and find these jobs that people are offering in a particular area, which is great. You can easily search those and find them. That's probably one of the best ways. The other way is to know somebody who already lives there who can kind of give you a feel, a lay of the land and say, oh, well, this company's doing well. Their parking lot is always full. This company's been asking for a lot of IT people. And they can give you a kind of the locals view of where the best places are to work in those particular geographical areas. The problem you may find is that some of the automated processes will read through your resume, see that your mailing address is out of town, and may not consider you for a local position. So you may want to specify that with the HR professionals in that particular organization. Ask them questions. Let them know that you're moving to the area. Can you submit a resume for this job? Keep a lookout for it. And don't worry that it says Colorado. I really am moving to Florida, just so they know that they won't dismiss your resume out of hand. I traditionally, in the last 20 years of my career, worked for companies that were not based in the state where I lived. For example, most of my last 20 years of my career was working for companies that were in California. I live in Florida. And the jobs were in Florida. Things they wanted me to do were in Florida, but there was no office. There was no building to go to. My office was in my home. And really, when I did my work, I traveled to people's locations directly. So anywhere in Florida, if they needed me in Orlando or Jacksonville or Tampa or Miami, I would get on a plane or hop in my car and I would go to those locations and see people in person. So effectively, my car or an airplane was my local place of business. It's where I did all of my work, was in my car and on the plane. So that is something not unusual for me, is working for an organization that is outside of my local state. And I've been dispatched for interviews. I've hopped on a plane and flown to California just to have interviews with companies. I've flown to Washington, D.C. just to have interviews with companies. So that's not very unusual. And this last job I had working for a company, I flew to Atlanta to meet with a manager who was stopping through Atlanta on their way to somewhere else. As many of you in the South already know, whether you're going to heaven or hell, you have to go through Atlanta. Everything goes through Atlanta with the airlines. So Atlanta was a great place to meet. We got a little meeting room. We were able to meet up there and have an interview between flights. It's really how it worked out. And it worked out great because, as it turns out, they hired me, thankfully. That took a while, though. It took a couple, 2 or 3 interviews and a little bit of inside promotion. I had to get my friends to say nice things about me who already worked there. And that's another thing you might want to consider, is that if you have people already working in those places for those companies, have them put in a good word for you. That can often be incredibly important, especially when you don't live there. You need somebody to speak up for you, and that can certainly help too. Other questions. Let's keep going down the list and see what's here. Lots to do on this list. I'm going to keep going. Scroll, scroll, scroll. The other things that are here, lots. You can see these questions go through as I click through. There's a lot here. And that I like this one. That's why I clicked on, hey, did I miss the question part? Yeah, it's in that first hour, but that's okay. As soon as I finish today, there's a couple of minutes to process the video, and then the video replay is available on YouTube almost immediately, just a few minutes after I hit the stop button. So that's where I would go to. I think that would help you. If you are someone who is trying to watch these, not only do you get to see the last one, but I've got all of the replays available either in a YouTube playlist or on the Professor Messer website. So plenty of ways to do that. Other questions. Let's see. Let's keep going. Other folks that have gone through some of these before are giving some great comments in the chat. If you're watching this video replay, make sure you have the chat up, because people will make comments on these as we go along. That might give you some ideas, although you're not able to kind of chat back with them, obviously, because they're living in the past. It's a great way to see where things people are thinking about and some other ideas. They add a little bit more into the mix. Some great recommendations in there too, so don't forget about those. Other questions. Let's keep going with these. This is a pretty good one. And I say this, even though it's Let's Play, he asked a really good question here. Is that VPNs used by people working from home can I create a fixed bandwidth in a home's access point? And I realize I know you're in Brazil, so there's sort of a language thing going on here, but I think I can decipher. It says, my wife is working. I just can't watch Professor Messer. And sometimes this does become a challenge when you have a lot of different people in your home all using the internet at one time. Some services can cause other services to not perform well. And if your access point slash router slash hub, your SOHO router device, your wireless router, we often call it, many of the wireless routers, the higher end wireless routers, have a quality of service feature built into them where it's a very rudimentary quality of service configuration, but it allows you to set certain applications to have a higher priority. They usually do this based on port numbers. Sometimes it's based on the type of application, but not always. And it allows you to maybe set VPN to allow this much bandwidth, but allow all of the other services to have either a higher or lower priority, or maybe a guaranteed amount of bandwidth that couldn't possibly be changed. So you might lock down 1 or 2 megabits per second for your video feed and then let VPN have everything else. So some of those capabilities are in different access points. You have to check the documentation for your access point. Generally, the higher end access points or routers tend to have those higher end features. You may have to get a new router to be able to enable some of those things, but I have that capability in my existing wireless router, and it's fantastic because now I can really tweak and customize exactly how much data should go through from different IP addresses, different applications, and to different locations as well. A lot of good options there, and it might solve some of the problems people might have, especially with multiple people working at the same time in the same location. especially at night. Everybody's at home. People are streaming videos. People are trying to get work done. Somebody needs to transfer a file. Now you can have all of this prioritized by the type of work they're doing or who they happen to be on the network. Lots of options there, and good stuff. Other questions. We got time for a couple more. So let's step through these. Let's go. Well, this one, another good question. Let's play. Professor, please don't erase your videos. I never do. No, you can go back. We have been making these videos for, I don't know, 15 years now. So you can go back to the very first video that I put on YouTube, and you can watch those. They're probably not in very good shape at this point, and I wouldn't recommend you watch them because of the poor production value. And the content was great, but I can't say that we really had the best lighting going on. Maybe there's some, actually wasn't too bad, but it was an evolutionary process. We'll say that. So all of my videos are all on YouTube. I think at this point I have over 3,000 videos on YouTube, but only the latest ones really apply to the exams. I leave the others there because occasionally people would like to go back to some of the older videos, especially if you run into a really old technology and you're wondering, what is this token ring thing that I've run into? What is this odd interface? What is this AGP port on my motherboard? You know, you got an old system. Sometimes you run into those in organizations. And I talk about AGP and these older technologies in those older videos. So they can be helpful. I don't want to remove them, and I never will. YouTube would have to remove them for that to happen. So that's my plan, is to never erase those videos. I don't see that that's necessary. We'll keep those videos in place and keep working, allow people to at least watch those if they need to watch those. What is the best resource to practice the performance-based questions found in the Security 601 exam, please? I would recommend two things: that you either watch replays of my Security Plus study groups, because very similar to the one we did today, each Security Plus study group has a performance-based question at the beginning of that study group. And although I don't have the Security Plus practice exams book in my hand, this is the A+, pretend this says CompTIA Security Plus SY0601 practice exams. I also have a practice exams book for Security Plus. That book has 15 performance-based questions inside of it. And ultimately, I think people worry too much about performance-based questions. I think they are concerned that they're going to be asked something that they weren't expecting. But in reality, the performance-based questions are asking you the same thing as the multiple-choice-based questions. They're just asking you in a different way. So if you know the exam objectives, you can answer the performance-based questions. There's nothing so weird or unusual with those that you would not be able to answer. They're asking you about things you already know. Therefore, it should be relatively easy to be able to answer those questions. That's the important part. Also want to thank Paul with the $19.99 super chat. Paul says, studied your materials hardcore in the last 6 weeks, passed my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus exams. Thank you so much, Professor. That is an aggressive schedule, certainly unusual. And Paul may be able to tell us if he already has experience in this industry in some way, because being able to do all three of those exams in what appears to be 6 weeks is a relatively aggressive schedule. Normally, it takes 2 to 3 months for a single exam. Getting all three in 6 weeks is remarkable. Congratulations on your 3 certifications. Thank you so much for the super chat as well. I'd love to hear what's next on your schedule, on your agenda. What do you do with all 3 of these now? I have a feeling I know what you're working on, some of the things that people are working towards, but it's nice to know what path are you setting up? What is your goal with these things? Where are these things taking you? Everybody has a different strategy. Everybody has a different path that they're planning to follow. It'd be really interesting to see where that happens to be. So let's keep other questions in the chat room, other things that have come up. We'll keep listing those and having those on the list. Whenever I start working through these also, and these questions, a lot of what people are worrying about or looking at is being able to find that job or that better job. And I think certifications is one part of that. There's other parts of it too, how you carry yourself, how you have a conversation with people, other things that you do in technology, the way that you tell the stories of the labs that you put together. Everybody should have a home lab. If you don't have a home lab and your home lab may be just a virtualization that's on your desktop, that's a home lab. That counts. We can do a lot of interesting things with that. We can load up different operating systems. We can load up new applications, and we can describe to a potential employer the things we did with those operating systems and the problems we ran into and how we resolved them. I think anytime you have a chance to install something new and play around with it, it's a learning process for you, but you're also creating some stories that you can tell in a job environment. If you're interested in this, I have a video. It's in this video description for this YouTube video that talks about how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about the value of a home lab and getting some practical hands-on. And I think that's something everybody should do, especially if you're planning to go in for a job interview. You need to have something to talk about. And installing Microsoft Server and setting up Active Directory is absolutely something to talk about. Installing a virtualized firewall and passing data through that firewall and looking at the logs and creating reports is a great story to tell in an interview. So those are just a couple of things you can do to be able to have a story, not just a story about what you did and what's in your lab, but the problems you ran into when you were installing these. And that's what employers love to hear for people interviewing for these roles. And you often hear the question, describe to me a challenging situation you were in and how you resolved it. And it might be something with setting up and getting your firewall running, or getting your Active Directory infrastructure up and running. Or maybe it's troubleshooting a problem you ran into with Windows Update, and it required you going into the registry and changing a registry setting. Or maybe you had to modify a text file, or maybe you had to update the configuration on a DNS server or in a host file. Those types of stories about here's the problem, here's the set of solutions or options I was given, and here's ultimately what resolved the problem. That's a 5 to 10 minute story during an interview where you can go through the process with somebody and let them know that you've done this before, you have this process in place to solve these technical problems, and you have some practical examples of those to have it in there. So I think that's another thing to consider. Having some type of practical lab time is really so important. Highly recommend you do that. And you're not looking to have everything work. You never want to walk into an employer and go, I installed this and everything worked perfectly. End of story. That doesn't help anyone. You want it to break. The only time you ever learn anything is when it breaks anyway. When everything's working, you don't really learn anything. Very little to be learned from things that are operating correctly. Where you really learn about a system, an application, or any part of the network is when that particular component breaks, when something isn't working as expected. That's when you really start to get into this. Did you install Wireshark? Did you capture some packets? What did the packets tell you? There's another story. So already you've got 4 or 5 stories you can walk in with. And when they say, tell us what you know about networking, you can pull that story out of your pocket, so to speak, and talk about things you went through. Do you put home lab on a resume? Well, sure. You can put home lab stuff on a resume. I think it's a great idea, especially when people say, have you ever worked with a firewall, an IPS, Active Directory, virtualization, cloud-based technologies? You know, if your home lab has some component of that, why wouldn't you put on your resume familiar with Active Directory? You can list out all of those technologies. I have a video on another video. It's in this video description, I believe, which is 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And I have a follow-up to that video, which is 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And I talk about how to lay out a resume with those topics on it. And I also mentioned that every resume you send in to an employer needs to be customized for that employer. And you may think, wait, I got to write a separate resume for every single job I want to apply to? Yes, you do. But it's not rewriting the entire resume. It's making small customizations to the resume that would make that resume apply specifically to that job, including how to create a cover letter in probably about 10 minutes. Every submission of a resume should have a cover letter on it, every single one. And not just any cover letter, but a specific kind of cover letter. I call it the T cover. Not, I don't call it that, but the name of it is a T-style cover letter. And I go through that in my video as well. That's the video on 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. I think that is in the 5 more reasons, but look at the video description. Those are valuable things also, because you get to tell a story with your cover letter. It's a chance to get in front of someone. And if you're not putting a cover letter with your resume, you're missing an opportunity. Now, can you get hired without the cover letter? Sure, you could, but why are you not positioning yourself better than everybody else applying to this job and proving before they even get to your resume that you've got everything required to do the job? I mean, that's what a cover letter should do for you. And so absolutely do that. Make sure you're familiar with those. And people in the chat room, and we all laugh about this. I'll do it with ChatGPT. It'll make cover letter. Do not do it with ChatGPT. It's not going to be a good, it'll do a cover letter. Yes. Will it be a good cover letter? Nope. It will not, because there's nuance and a focus and a particular plan around creating this cover letter. We're not just putting a cover letter there because they said, please attach a cover letter. There's a reason you do a cover letter, and I talk about that in my video. There's a purpose to this, and a very specific purpose. You're giving yourself an advantage, but how do you do that is the real key. And that's something you just can't ask an AI to give you a cover letter that solves this particular strategic issue. You have to really write it with that in mind. And I think if you spend just a couple of extra minutes, we're not talking about a lot of time that you would spend on this, you can put together and position yourself better than anyone else who is applying to that job just by putting things in that cover letter and resume that position it specifically for that job. One of the things people ask me all the time is that I'm not saying that ChatGPT doesn't make a great cover letter. It probably does, but it doesn't make a cover letter that accomplishes the very specific strategic requirements that I lay out in my video. There's a reason you're creating that cover letter. What's the reason? ChatGPT doesn't know the reason. They couldn't possibly create the cover letter in a way that is customized to you. It will customize it to the robot, and that doesn't help anybody. Everybody's going to do that. But there's a better way to do it. And I explain in my video why and how you would do that. And I think it'd be worth your time. ChatGPT has some great advantages. It does some things extremely well. Writing a customized cover letter is not one of those things. And you need to know where the line gets drawn for that and why it's so important to make that happen. That's really an important key. And I think that's the real piece. If you go to that video, you just look at a T-style cover letter, that's what we're looking for. And maybe you get it, just tell it to give you a outline of a T-style, and then you customize it. Either way, you're writing the cover letter, and that's the important part. I give you an example of that already in my video, and why I create the letter, how I create the cover letter, then what you would do to really position it in the right way to get the employer's attention. And what you shouldn't put on it as well. That's going to be important too. So I think that's the other piece of it, is you need to kind of focus on where you would look at those. Well, we did a little bit of overtime today, but that's the end of our second hour in the after show. I want to thank everyone for being here on the live stream. This is one of those things, as I mentioned earlier, I love waking up in the morning knowing there's a live stream on this day. It's something we really enjoy putting together, and we hope you enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for your time in the first hour and being here for our Q&A, and for spending time in the after show with the questions. It's always interesting to see what people are doing with their career, what they want to do next, what they're doing with the certifications. And it's a great time for us to kind of talk over some of these ideas and how we can even make that better. We, of course, do another study group 2 days from now on Thursday for the Core 2 A+ certification. We'd love for you to come back on Thursday and do this again. All brand new questions all around the Core 2 exam objectives. And of course, we'll do an after show with that one as well. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Core 1 study group. Thanks, everybody.